Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020, order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members any meeting of a public body. This meeting, the Selectboard and Finance Committee will be conducted both in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public, parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, or for those who wish to do so remotely. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. This meeting is being recorded by the Berkshire Eagle, the Berkshire Elks, the town of Great Barrington. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items, those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items listed, not listed, may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. We'll start with the budget overview of the town manager.
First of all, welcome everybody to the fiscal 25 budget kickoff. I just want to begin with a really high level overview of our proposed budget as I've done in past years. So just bear with me here. I'm going to go ahead and get my PowerPoint up on the screen. Thank you. Bear with me. Almost there. Okay. So I'm going to walk through a few slides here and then we can get right into the detailed department requests. We have a number of department heads here with us tonight, either in person or virtually, and we'll do our best to answer any questions you have along the way. And as is always the case, if you have any questions we can't answer tonight, we'll plan to do some research and come back and provide those answers. Come on. Just show me as your panel, not as your slideshow. Oh. That doesn't seem to be advancing now either. Bear with me here.
Yeah.
Oh. So I'm seven.
Are you having trouble getting it to go to slide presentation?
Yeah.
On his computer it is, but it's not showing it there.
Not a good start here. I'm sorry, everyone.
I mean, if you just enlarge the screen, like the view, it might just be good enough.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, although when I change, oh, there we go, it's changing slides now.
What are you putting in?
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm sorry, it's not functioning properly, but I will be sharing this, this presentation on our website, and there's nothing in this presentation that isn't already in your budget book anyway. I'm just gonna, just point out some highlights, so I'm just gonna jump right into our priorities. So this is my fifth budget presentation, as your town manager, and I just wanted to start by saying that this was by far the most challenging, budget to draft in my time. Some really difficult decisions were made along the way out of necessity. I'm sure if you spent any time over the weekend or the past couple of days looking over the book, that was probably very obvious to you. And no doubt we'll have some more difficult decisions to make in the coming weeks, but this is what I put together as my priority list, starting with the first bullet, and I will not read all these bullets to you, I promise. But public safety, this budget proposes some modest increases to our police and fire department budgets, both in operations and in capital, and we'll discuss these in more depth along the way. I believe public safety is tomorrow night. No, next Tuesday. Our regional building department, tab 2 here on my slide. This is new this year and what I think is a necessary step based on our current hiring climate. So I'll elaborate more as we go through the process, but we're now providing permitting and inspectional services to 3 other communities in addition to Great Barrington through a shared staff intermunicipal agreement. And like I said, we'll get into more details about that actually tonight when we hit the building department budget. Our town assets, that's bullet 4 here, roads, bridges, sidewalks, and maintenance and repairs to our aging public buildings. We're going to talk quite a bit about that as we get closer to the capital process. And lastly, a number of vehicles are due for replacement this year. And slide 9, we'll get into a little more detail on those. Revenues. This is what we think our revenues will look like next year. And as always, we use very conservative numbers. We're using $3,675,000 of certified free cash to reduce the tax levy, and $1,150,000 in retained earnings to help fund our enterprise fund capital improvements, for a total here of $46,081,612. And our expenditures at a glance, this year's budget is $16,505,858. It's up 12.9% over last year, mostly due to fixed cost increases. Our share of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District budget will come in around $21,040,872, an increase of about 3.5%. Wastewater is $3,153,295 this year, which is actually down by about 8.3%. And the other figures listed here in this slide we'll cover later in the process, and we're back at that $46,081,612 number again. Next slide is our pie chart, and it's just a visual for you, breaking out our various expenditure categories. I'll just leave that up there for a minute. Slide 6 is our town operating budgets, some historical data for the last 5 years. And this slide, fiscal 25 appropriations, this just breaks down our budget into 8 general categories. And again, that $16,505,858 town operating budget. Going to head to our capital program. This is just another visual here for you. It's a look at our capital program over the last 5 years. And again, tomorrow night, we'll get into much more detail when we cover the CIP, which is in tab 7 and 8 in your budget books. But in summary, it's looking like another aggressive capital year for us as we attempt to keep up with our rapidly aging streets, sidewalks, and buildings. So we'll elaborate. This is just our capital highlights, a little more information. I know that's a little difficult to read here, but again, all of this is in your budget books, and this will be posted on our website tomorrow morning. I won't read through these, but this is where the work we'll do over the next few weeks will get really challenging, because like many cities and towns, everything's deteriorating faster than we're investing, and we have some work to do. So I also wanted to just mention that what you're seeing in tab 7, if you spent some time looking at the capital budget this year, it's not really an accurate picture of what we've identified as our needs. It's what we've identified as our priority needs. We actually developed a capital plan that probably shouldn't surprise any of you, because we gave you a little warning of this last year in budget books, but our original capital plan came in at around $24 million. So this is scaled back quite a bit. This slide is our proposed special articles, far fewer special articles being proposed this year than last year. Again, not because we can't identify needs, but because we're trying to preserve as much free cash as possible to reduce the tax levy. So if you haven't already, please take a look at the chart that we included in tab 9. That'll just give you a better idea for what the requests were for special articles this year, including some of my own, and the ones that I unfortunately was not able to recommend be funded for various reasons.
And Mark, can I just ask a clarification question?
Yeah.
These special articles are not yet in the budget, is that correct?
These will be warrant articles separate.
Right, so they're
from-
not in the operating budget.
Correct.
Right. Or the capital budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, this is just a summary slide. It's my last slide. Just again, some important figures to keep in mind as we move through this process. Our estimated tax rate this year is 15.45. And our fund balances for our general fund free cash, our retained earnings, our community impact funding balance, that portion of our free cash that's set aside for that specific purpose. And then our stabilization and OPEB balances. Again, all this information is in your budget books. Just wanted to put it together tonight, so you had a look before we dive in. And I just wanted to say before we close this portion anyway, I just wanted to recognize town staff, the department heads, for all the time they put into this budget, getting to this point where we're presenting it tonight. Hundreds of hours, again, as always, go into this, and I just wanted to say I very much appreciate it. And I also wanted to recognize both Chris Rembold and Ally Crespo for their work on the capital budget and the comprehensive budget. So thank you for. So that's it.
Bill, you have a statement?
Just a brief statement, I recently was hired as the interim executive director of the Community Development Corporation of Southern Berkshire, a local nonprofit organization focused on housing and economic opportunity for low and moderate income households in the Southern Berkshire. I'm mindful of the potential for a conflict of interest between my role with the CBCFD and my role with the Finance Committee, particularly with respect to matters relating to affordable housing. When I believe that a potential conflict of interest exists, I will comply with the applicable conflict of interest law and recuse myself from participating or voting on a matter in question. Thank you.
So what we'll do, as we've done each time, we'll start with what's on the agenda. which starts with, section 6. This, tonight will all be in section 6. And the page numbers I'll read off. The department staff member will give a little overview, we'll ask questions, and then we'll move on to the next one. So, fairly simple, tonight's a little easier night, get us warmed up for tomorrow night and next week. So, let's start with section 6, select board, town manager, page 1.
I have it shared on the big screen also. Mind if I dive right in?
Go, dive right in.
All right.
I'll read out them as you go along, and then, you can, our staff member can talk about it.
Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward budget this year. It's an increase of just 0.84% over last year. The only significant change I really wanted to point out is that I moved $20,000 from contracted services. So you see that new line in the salaries section. It's at the bottom of the salary section where it says new social media / public relations, $20,000. That's been shifted from, it's not a new, it's a new line, but it's not new funding. That $20,000 previously lived in the contracted services line down below. So I'm proposing this year that we move away from the private sector contractor to a part-time employee to manage our social media accounts and our PR. So it gives me a little more flexibility. And that's really it. Everything else is looking pretty similar to last year. Select board salaries are still at $4,900 per board member. And nothing else really changed significantly, but happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question. So what do you mean by social media and PR, and what have you done in the past and why are we doing it? What is the objective here?
So we, every year we put out to bid, our PR, consultant contract. We sometimes will receive one bid, sometimes two. But what I'm proposing this year is that we move away from that and hire a part-time employee instead. We're currently paying about $175 an hour for this work. And I think we would be better served by having a part-time employee.
No, sorry, maybe I was not clear. Like, I haven't really seen any PR or social media activity. So if you could just.
So this person's responsible for managing our social media accounts, Facebook account.
Are
or
you talking about
Instagram.
the Facebook accounts?
Facebook, Instagram, posting to our website, and also drafting all the press releases that go out to the
Okay.
media
All right.
and are posted in that news section you see on our homepage of our website.
So you're gonna have that person also manage your web content, or?
This would be, for $20,000, it would be a very part-time job. So I don't think they would be managing our website necessarily, but they would be,
I don't mean managing website, managing more content on the website, or not really? Is it gonna be?
They do the news, the announcements section, or who does that on the website?
right now, our PR consultant is
Right.
doing that.
Yeah.
So all the news that you see in that news feed. on
Okay,
our
so
home
all the new
page.
content, they will be managing.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
I guess I do, and again, I think, I do wanna say, I mean, I think, Mark, as you said, it sounds like you've had to make some tough decisions, and I think we will have to ask some tough questions, because I will say I was shocked to see the percentage increase, and I know what's driving that, and we'll come to that later. But I guess, here it's $20,000. Is that because we've been spending $20,000? Could we have some savings from $20,000 if we go to this new part-time model? Because it's not gonna be $175 an hour, I
Right.
assume.
We've been spending 20,000 a year. It hasn't changed. It hasn't been increased in my time, so the last 5 years. In fact, I think it was $20,000 before I even started, so. There's the possibility, I suppose, that we could see some savings there by
I mean, I'm
hiring a
not that
part-time.
right, obviously not a lot, but I
Yeah.
think we have to be thinking really frugally, given that we have some fixed expenses that there's nothing we can do.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I
and that's
guess
what's
I'd
driving
like to
that.
think about this line.
Anyone else? Okay, page 2 under section 6, which is the finance committee reserves and reserve fund.
No change here from last year, although you can see from my first request in the budget request column, I did attempt to increase this to $150,000 in the first draft. $100,000 is really not a number I'm all that comfortable with. But again, I had to make some difficult decisions here, so I reduced it back to $100,000. But as long as I can remember, our reserve fund has been $100,000, and it is not growing at the same pace as our budget. So that makes me a little concerned. $100,000 goes disappears pretty quickly, as you all know. Travel and training and the dues line remains unchanged.
Questions, comments? So we are, I don't think anybody's new here, but we will go through these again, obviously. This is our first look at it. Page 3, town account. Yeah.
Let's see. So there is an increase in the town accountant line item, and that's due to increases in salary. The assistant accountant, again, is just an increase in the annual increase. We have eliminated the line for the accounts payable clerk, as the job duties of this part-time position have now been completely incorporated into the assistant accountant position. Neither of us are eligible for longevity at this point. Our accounting and auditing services, that is really for our annual audit. That's the purpose of this line item. The budget request has been increased to include an increase to $27,000 for the town's regular annual auditing services, as well as the need for a single audit of about $6,000. A single audit is required when a municipality expends over $750,000 in federal grant awards during a fiscal year, which we have. Contractual services, although there has been nothing spent in this line through 12/31, the town expects to utilize these funds in the latter half of the fiscal year and is requesting half for FY25 to align with our needs. Office supplies, this line item was new in FY24 in an effort to provide a more accurate accounting of town expenditures. We have currently expended more than we anticipated, so we're asking for a slight increase until we are able to get a better idea of the needs of the office. Travel and training, we are reevaluating these costs and would like to keep them, I think that one. Yeah, slightly up, just to do some new training with the new staff. Dues and memberships, there is no change. And that's that.
Questions, comments?
I have a question, and that's not just for you, Ali, but just in general. What is going on in terms of salary increases? Are you guys looking at it across the board, or are there some areas where you want to go more aggressively than others? I mean, I don't really know anything about the HR policy here, but just in general, I noticed that salaries did go up in some places, maybe most places.
Yeah, so fiscal 25 will be year 2 of our 3-year collective bargaining agreements. So this is a 3% increase for non-union and union personnel this year.
3%.
3%, right? So everything you see in the budget request column for salaries has that 3% baked into it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Technology. Section 6, page 4.
Yeah, we don't should be on the line.
Regular stuff there.
Oh, do you want me to take my screen down? Is it will it be?
Yeah, I got it there. Well, you said you are unmuted.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to turn my video on because I'm home today. I had a family member pass away and I don't look the best at the moment. So can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of the technology budget, I took over the IT coordinator position when Amy left. So basically the only increase that you're gonna see here was requested from our IT person, and it was due to his insurance company making him do some upgrades in terms of like cybersecurity and things like that. So he has to do some upgrades, and it affects every person in town who has an email account and a Windows account with the town. So it's going to be a little bit of an increase. So the only increase you're going to see there is for the software licenses, because I put it under software licenses because it includes a new license that he needs to get and upload to all of the users. But other than that, it's pretty level.
I did want to just jump in and point out that the original budget did include a full-time director of IT services. I know we spent a little time last year talking about that. That was one of my highest priorities for this coming fiscal year, but again, some difficult decisions needed to be made, and we pulled that back. So
I have a question,
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
about the repairs and maintenance. So we budgeted, I guess 25,000, and as of the end of the calendar year, we spent 3,000. What is going on there? Or is it just being delayed, or we have some major repairs and maintenance happening later, or?
Alicia,
So this is not my budget from last year, it's Amy's. So I basically had to, it's only being spent for basically any equipment repairs that John, our IT person, has to do, and any like copier and printer maintenance things. I basically went off of Amy's number. I don't know if she had something in mind that was going to be coming up, but I went down 5,000, but I was just told, you know, in the memo, it said keep a level budget. So I figured, all right, we've only spent 3, so I took 5 away. Other than that, I can't really tell you because this isn't my budget. I mean, it's my budget this year, but previous years was not. So it's kind of hard for me to.
you'll see that the year-end actual here is about $23,000.
So it just basically happened at the end of the.
It could, if we don't use that money, of course, it will just roll free
Right,
cash,
right.
but
I was just curious because I see this level of spending and then
Yeah.
it just dipped, so.
if we did have a
Mm.
significant repair that was needed though, without the funding, that would be a real challenge for us.
Okay.
Yes.
Alicia, could you explain the contracted services a little bit? I see an increase in that line as well.
That is our IT person. So that is his increase. John Shannon, his name is. So we're contracted with him for all of our IT and server needs, firewalls, everything like that. So
Has he increased his rate or we are just using him more? You know?
no, we're not using him more. That's an increase in his rate.
Increasing his rate, okay.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
So, if I could do it, 22 cents here. I'm Joe Agra, the Department of Public Works. We've struggled with the IT person here for a couple of years, but I think we all need to understand, and hopefully it can be discussed further. You know, Mark has taken the position to cut it out, but really it's a detriment to the town in a sense. We have one major issue with our IT or our computer systems. It could cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I guess it just needs some further discussion. I don't know if there's a savings in contracted services if we end up hiring a full-time person, but, you know, last year I passed on assistant DPW superintendent, to support that position, the IT position was gone. But I really wish that we would all have a good, healthy conversation on that, what the detriment of the town could be not having this person.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. It's definitely a necessary position.
My original thought here was we would hire a full-time IT director. We would keep our IT coordinator and our contracted service provider on for about a 6-month period to help us make that transition. But again, so the first version of this budget had both of those lines reduced by half just for the first half of the fiscal year. And then when we had to make that decision to take the full-time position out, we went back and backfilled those two lines.
Do other towns have full-time IT staff? Towns of our size?
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't done any research into similar sized communities, but we can.
And Mark, I'm sorry, you think it's realistic, $85,000 for the kind of a position?
I think so. We did do some research last year to see what IT directors were making at that time. We increased this request by $5,000 this year. So I think it was 80 last year, is that right?
Yeah, it seems a bit low to me, but.
It could be. Just keep in mind that I do have that contingency line for salary adjustments, mid-year salary adjustments, and when I need it during hiring as well. So I do have a little flexibility built in here.
Joe, and maybe, and Steve, maybe it doesn't have to be tonight, but it would be helpful if you could elaborate more on your specific concerns as to how an IT failure or disruption costs the town money.
Well, you know, I'm not, I hope that this isn't being taken as me undermining what Mark is talking about. It's, you know, we had a couple healthy discussions, and I support the need for an IT person as he does. And not against, Alicia's doing what she can with the time she has and the stipend she gets, but the inefficiency in town hall when you have an IT problem is tremendous. We have, just simply some of our remote locations, like the highway garage and the parks department garage, you can't even receive a cell phone signal inside the building off of Wi-Fi. So every time you get a call there, the call's either missed or the guy has to go outside to make the call. So these are simple things that an IT director on staff could go and address. Just an example, adding a piece of software, the type of computers that we use. Some of us just use a computer as a word processor and access to our Munis program, something like that. Someone like myself uses it to get into AutoCAD and Bluebeam, and the computer can't handle what it is. It needs to have higher power computer in some areas and a lower power computer. And that's asking a lot of someone like Alicia or even a part-time person. So these are just little pieces you pick up. On top of it, we got hacked, we have firewall protection, but with a person here that's monitoring it every day and watching the screen, what happens, he could stop it or she could stop it versus it happened and then corrected it. But we can work together here.
And I think it's important that we have this healthy discussion, but I also think it's important we look at the entire budget
Right.
to
Yeah.
see where we are. Because it's a good argument, but when you look at the bottom line,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do to take out 85 or
More.
more?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have just one question.
So let Lee go first. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's just, so right now with the IT, with John Shannon, when something goes wrong, you call him and then you have to wait because they're their clients, and is that what's happening? There's a delay?
Typically, we reach out to Alicia,
Oh, they just.
and if she can handle it,
Okay.
she does, or she works through John Shannon.
Okay,
Just to get, a directory on our shared drive set up so 2 people can see it. It's a week plus process, where someone was even in the office. It's a 10.
so if we had an IT person at $85,000 a year versus contracted services at $37,000, is that what, am I missing?
I think Mark can answer that question better, but I think there's some transition here, you need both,
Yeah.
and then elimination.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, and which is a little bit, follows up on what Joel was saying. What is actually, do we have in place any kind of policy or plan in case something major happens to the systems? I mean, in terms of backup or redundancy or any of it? And who is in charge of it? Or
Right now, that would be John Shannon. We'd have to ask.
And
John.
he's the one we contract with, so he would be the one, okay.
Right. Alicia, did I miss anything there that
Um,
you wanna?
I mean, no,
add?
he maintains I mean, I switch the backup every day, every day so that we have a daily backup of all of our systems. But he maintains that whole system. All I do is change it every day.
How long has he been with our IT? How long has he been with?
I started here in 2005 and John was already in place then. He's been here for quite a while working with us, so he's very familiar with our.
Do you know how many
No.
clients he has in addition to us?
I don't, we should.
He has he has a lot of clients and he has some bigger clients. I know he has most of South County. He also has the Big E. So when it's September and the Big E is happening, it's very hard to get a hold of him for almost an entire month. He has some bigger clients that take up a lot of his time. So I definitely think that, a full-time position where we could contact that person on site would be helpful, but he does have quite a few clients. I don't know exactly how many.
So not this, it wouldn't be a discussion this year, but this sounds like it could be a shared services, another shared services opportunity.
Possibly, yeah. I think we probably need more than a part-time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only problem with that is the contracted services being about 37,000. This year's already a half-time position. So if you start to share it with 2 or 3 other towns, you're probably not gonna get
Or
much
whenever.
more service.
Yeah.
And
With 13 departments in a dispatch center, I think we could keep an IT director pretty busy.
Yeah, I'm just curious about other towns, and how they get by.
Well, it sounds like John is already for shared services. He's working for other South
Yeah.
County towns, right?
Well, and the biggie. It's kind of a big.
let's move on to page 5, the assessors. Ross, are you there? Hold on. Ross, you're unmuted.
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Ross.
So as far as my budget goes, I think most of it's fairly level. I think where we see the big increase is in contract services. And that's due to a Department of Revenue requirement that we have to go through a recertification here in fiscal 25. That used to be an every 3-year requirement, and thank God they moved it to an every 5-year requirement. And so that's why you're seeing the increase in contract services. It's in order to do the additional work required as part of the recertification for fiscal 25. Still there?
Questions? Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, I guess just to clarify, Ross, this is Ann. So this is because in the most recent past 5 years, it's been a sort of sampling reassessment, and now it's gonna be every property, or what's the difference between this coming year and previous years?
So each year, what we call an interim year, all our numbers have to be approved. But every 5 years, the assessing work has to be certified. And when they go into a certification, it's a much, much deeper dive into the data, into the tables, into the curves, looking at, different neighborhoods, doing all sorts of different analysis to certify that, everything's in line. The values are in line and ratios are in line from, single families to multifamilies to commercial. Neighborhood assessments are in line, cost tables are in line, land curves are all lined up, and current and as accurate as they can be. So it's just a much, much deeper dive, a lot more statistical analysis that has to be reviewed and approved by the Department of Revenue, per their work plan.
And your estimate is that this will cost about an additional 27,000?
Correct.
So Ross, so this is basically an outside firm that's gonna be collecting and doing some additional analysis as required by the state?
Right, a big portion of that came from our company called IRC. They've been doing most of the personal property down here for over 20 years. So, they'll be sending a team of people out here in the near future, and they'll be going through every personal property account. We'll be doing things like second home studies and things along those lines.
So this is primarily for data collection and further analysis. That's what they are gonna be using them for.
Say that again?
I'm saying it is primarily for additional data collection and some statistical analysis we are using them for.
Correct, a lot more.
Okay.
And when was the last time we did one of these?
It would have been back in 20 or 21, 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we are now on section 6, page 6. Who am I looking for?
Alicia,
Yeah.
she should be also.
Hello
Go.
again.
Hello.
Um,
Again,
so, my budget is pretty level other than the, salary increases and I had requested a part-time payroll clerk, which, Mark did not suggest, so that's fine. I'll just pass over that. Everything else is pretty level other than postage. Postage is expected to increase 2 times over the next fiscal year, possibly up to 70 cents. So I put out an email and asked every department what they thought they would be spending the town clerks in an election year. So hers was quite high, and that's why I had the very high postage number. But other than that, it's pretty level.
I have a question. Alicia, this is Ann. You brought down the tax and title litigation line. Is that because we've been catching up on those, or was this just an attempt to manage the budget?
It was a little bit of both. It's attempt to
Okay.
manage the budget, but also we had some money set aside for a project that is taking a little bit longer than expected. So I can still utilize some of those funds. We put it on the tax recap, so I can still use some of those funds. So I lowered that number because of that.
Anyone else? Okay, next
Thank
is
you.
page 7, human resources.
Sophia should be in line.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, while you're finding Sophia, I just wanted to remind everyone that we transitioned from a part-time shared HR director to a full-time position on November 1st. And I think that most, if not all, of the department heads would agree. This was necessary for managing our personnel matters, our onboarding, our recruiting, retaining employees, and doing it properly. So I'll stop there.
You're unmuted.
Hi, hi, can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy to be here. Thanks again for bringing me on full time. This is my first budget meeting, so very exciting. The only thing I think that my current budget before you doesn't reflect is my request for an increase to my budget. I mean, not my budget line, my training line. I would like $1,000 increase to that. I just want to make sure that I'm keeping up with the nuances of municipal HR. I did discuss this with Mark as well. But other than that, everything is pretty, I would say, frugal. I'm on the frugal end of the scale, so.
What Sophia's asking for is an additional $1,000. This budget only reflects $1,000. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sophia, but you're looking to increase that to 2,000, correct?
Correct.
Any questions or comments?
How does that request, get resolved or done or whatever?
We're the same.
She's asking for an extra $1,000.
Yeah, same way we do everyone. When we're done with all the presentations, we'll go through each one of these and discuss. And and vote on it. For each board to vote on it. Okay. Clerk. Page 8. So that's Jen.
You know, there.
Yeah, that doesn't her last name, but I'm assuming that's her.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'll just kind of go the same through mine, just like everyone else has. Starting with the top, the election workers, there's been an increase in that. Currently, right now, for this budget season, there is 2 elections, and for fiscal 25, there will be 3. So there'll be an increase in elections, therefore an increase in election workers. Down below, under the equipment maintenance and repairs, that went up a little bit because the maintenance for my voting machines, the yearly maintenance increased on that, and my copier contract increased as well because I now have the old Selectboard copier in my office, so that one was a little bit more than the previous copier that I had. There's also an increase in the elections, obviously, just like I said before, so that's why that one's higher, because there will be 3 elections instead of 2. And then there's a decrease in the travel training, because I'm in my 3rd year of certification for the town clerk. So for fiscal 25, I will not need that extra money that I've been using for the last couple of years, so I decreased that line item.
Comments, questions?
What was the increase for, was it 3%, 2% increases? This is a really critical
Salaries?
office in the town. It just looks like the, like the assistant doesn't get a huge increase.
3%.
With the percentage.
Across the board,
Yeah.
right? For all employees.
Thank you, sir. Building inspector, page 17.
Do you mind if I start on this one, Matt? Then I'll have you answer okay, I'll have you answer the second question. Let me just get to the right page here.
Page
17.
17.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. There we go. Okay, so some of you are here are already familiar, but we transitioned after Ed May retired back in August of last year to a shared building department. So a regional program sharing staff with 3 other communities, the towns of Lee, Lenox, and Stockbridge, and all of this is handled through an intermunicipal agreement. And as a result, Great Barrington is now hosting 4 employees. Matt is our building commissioner, and then 3 other local building inspectors. So the thought was that we would have a commissioner overseeing the shared building program for all 4 communities. And then we would have a local inspector, we'd have a physical presence in all 4 communities. We thought it was necessary to do this, based on the hiring climate. It's very, very challenging to find building commissioners and even local building inspectors. In fact, when Matt was serving as our assistant building inspector, when he left, his position remained vacant for almost 2 years now. It's still, yeah. So this is why you're seeing such a sharp increase in the budget, $283,000 or 48% or 49%. But the reason I wanted to just jump in here is because I wanted to point a couple of things out. This one budget right here is reflects about a 2% increase in the overall budget. And even though it's a sharp increase, we will be billing back the towns of Lee, Lennox, and Stockbridge for their portion of this budget. So Great Barrington is only responsible for 32.5% of this budget. The town of Lee is responsible for 25.5%. The town of Lennox is responsible for 23.5%. Stockbridge is responsible for 18.5%.
Mark, and when you say responsible for the budget, do you mean of the total building inspector budget or the assistant or the salaries?
The total building inspector's budget has increased
Okay,
by,
so,
see
no,
that
no,
bottom
I'm
right?
sorry, but of the 283, 265 that's being proposed, Great Barrington is responsible for 33.2% of that, you said?
So it's a little complicated because the assessments also include benefits. So as the employer, we're providing, health insurance and other benefits to our employees. So our partner towns are paying 25.5%, 23.5%, and 18.5% of all the costs, not just what you're seeing here.
Total cost, including the benefits.
Total
Right, but
cost
the
section.
benefits aren't in this budget.
The benefits aren't in this budget is what I'm trying to say. So it's not.
But the reimbursements from the other three towns. So this is not including those reimbursements from the other three towns.
No, what will happen here is
Yeah.
we'll budget to fund all of the salaries
And then-
here and the benefits in a different category. We'll then invoice our partner towns for their percentage of the salaries and benefits. So what will happen is we'll receive those payments that'll close to our general fund free cash. So it'll be a year delay before we see this money come back, but
So there's no way to budget that is running for the FY 25. So the first year, we're gonna be behind the year, and
it's
then
a
after
hit
that,
this
it's
first
fine.
year.
Yeah.
And can you go through those percentages again?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's Great Barrington, so I should clarify by just saying that the intermunicipal agreement has percentages based on the number of permits issued per town, so it's gonna shift a
So it's a bit
percentage
like
or
the
two.
school budget.
Yeah, exactly. So for fiscal year 23, well, I won't get into the details on budget numbers, but Great Barrington is responsible for 32.5% for fiscal 25. Lee is responsible for 25.5%. Lennox will be responsible for 23.5%. And Stockbridge 18.5%.
So as it is budgeted right now, we would be responsible really for 156,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you were to add up the benefits, so the salary and the benefits, we're actually spending less.
I
by
see
doing
that,
this.
I see that.
Yeah, it does, I know it doesn't appear that way because
No,
it's
no,
such
no,
a, again,
it's-
sharp increase, but
It's showing.
When do the other towns actually write a check for their portions of the salary?
at the end of the fiscal year, just like our HR intermunicipal agreement, at the end of the fiscal year in June, we bill out all of our partner towns so that they can pay that bill in the current fiscal
So,
year.
so a very minor point, but it's a little larger given where our interest rate budget, our interest costs. Are we essentially charging them interest for the fact that we're essentially lending them money for a year?
No. The flip side is the admins, there are 4 admins, they will all be Lee employees. So
But we will still pay.
we'll pay a portion
We will,
of that.
So, yeah,
So that's why you'll see in the contracted services line here, we've moved some funding down from what was up top as admin assistant is now down below in the contracted services line. So we had to do
so,
some,
but basically you're gonna be running it 1 year lag going forward because you will always be 1 year behind on the actual cost of it. Right.
correct, you
Yeah,
won't see the
Yeah.
revenue come back until it closes out in next year's
Right,
free
right, right.
cash.
So they will pay for that, we will pay for the big chunk of it,
Right.
yeah.
Mark, why is the admin then doubled? and 44,500 to 82.
There are other things baked into that contracted services line, but I'll let Matt take that. I'm not sure exactly what.
Yeah, so that entire line would ultimately cover hopefully the entire portion, or most of the portion of the admins going to leave, because they'd be the employees if this can all work out the way it's planned. But then I have, an inspector who works remotely, who does a lot of plan reviews, and a lot of zoning. Sort of looking for consultation, I guess is a good word. And I wanted to retain him in this line just as needed. Right now, he actually fulfills an actual building inspector role for us. But that would be, the plan would be to have that in there, and then everything that I have to, as far as the copier and all that kind of stuff, that's embedded in my part.
I believe $17,000 of this is also weights and measures. Is that right?
Correct, that's, yeah.
I'm sorry, so what is 70 or 17?
$17,000,
Is what?
yeah.
It was actually a zero weights and measures.
And was that in the fiscal year 24 budget?
It was, but it was underfunded by a lot.
That's sort of the gas pumps and all that.
Yeah, all the scales in town, gas pumps. So we contract through the state of Massachusetts for a licensed sealer of weights and measures for that cost.
I have a question about if you have a multi-town agreement, how do you agree on the level of expenses among those 4 towns? And does it get renewed every year, or what is the process for that?
Our intermunicipal agreement with our partner towns is a 3-year agreement.
3-year, okay.
And it's based on permits issued in the communities from the prior fiscal year. So
Okay.
this fiscal 25
Reflects last year's.
will be fiscal 23's
Right, okay,
budget numbers, right?
okay. So basically, that's the line to which you basically budget the number of permits.
Correct.
Okay.
So the percentages change slightly
Right,
every
but
year,
that's really what's
but
driving.
not by much.
In prior years, it's been, I think I've asked about sort of updating the fee schedule on the whole menu of fees associated with your services. Has that been done recently?
Building department, we did in my time here, but we haven't looked at it again.
That's not a discussion, that was something I wanted to, just.
3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've asked about that for the last 2
There's
years.
some room for improvement there.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly with the plumbing and electrical inspectors.
It should be synchronized, do the best we can to sort of have it be related to the cost of all that work.
Just from my personal experience, some of the permit fees in Barrington are significantly lower than the other towns that I deal with. So I don't think it'd be a culture shock to kind of match sort of what have some of those permit fees in other towns.
It's on our to-do list, so they have for quite a while.
It's all over in progress right now.
And I guess I just want to apologize, I'm still sort of struggling with the weights and measures for 17,000, because in fiscal year 23, it was 3,500, fiscal year 24 is 3,600. Have we been under estimate, excuse me? Have we been underestimating?
I didn't get everything.
So what she's asking, well, she
Sorry.
chokes on chocolate. Are we underfunding weights and measures every year? Have we been? And so it's gone from 3,500.
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. What I know is that it was contracted with the state, kind of as an optional thing, but I do think it was probably at $3,500. I have a sealer in Lee. Lee's the only other town that's required to have one by to have its own by the state standards. It's based on population.
Okay.
And that budget's around just over $7,000. So.
Anyone else?
I was just wondering, so it's based on permits pulled, are there any other things that we should roll into determination? That the percentage that we might be missing, like consultation hours, or it just seems like it's so cut and dry, and wondering if there's really some other things that could be rolled into this percentage.
It's something we could look at. I think that's probably the most accurate way to go about it, only because that's your revenue. Your revenue actually comes from the permit fees. Local consultation is an interesting concept, and maybe there's an avenue there. But when we talked about doing this in the first place, it really was talking about, okay, how much money does every town bring in and how much are they expending individually now? Clear Lennox has been a shared service for 8 or 9 years now, I think, so. But, you know, you're talking about 2 towns that together might have about, together a little bit more.
So it might be something you keep track of, like if one town's, you know, you finding yourself really spending a lot of time
Yeah, absolutely.
consulting or doing other
Yeah.
things that don't show up in a permit.
To your point, though, a lot of the time, so the idea with this is as a commissioner, I could deal with those kind of higher level things and not, you know, go running out to solar inspections and things like that.
Yeah,
But on the flip side of that, your permit fee for, you know, a bigger project, you know, Timberland Heights would be a big deal when it comes South Street. The housing in South Street would probably hit that mark. But those permit fees in turn are way larger than any house that's gonna be built.
But do you ever kind of go through a lot of steps of consulting and then it never comes out to, they just walk away?
That can happen, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I just
Sure.
want to make sure that we're getting.
That can
the money
happen
for
because
those.
sometimes people come in, they have, oh, I want to do this or that, oh, I did that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
it
so maybe
does.
just keep an eye on that and just, you know, maybe down the line, roll that into.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. I'll look at that, Health Department, page 20. Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so you'll see 2 major changes with the health department budget, or what I proposed. I proposed a legal line, which is near this year. I can't say too much about it, but the Board of Health is exploring an executive session, some legal action, and they proposed that number to cover legal expenses. And then under contracted services, we added an additional, it's wrong, but we added an additional 10,000 to cover potential water testing to test Houstonic water.
You're saying it should be 10 instead of 12? Or-
It should be, under town manager recommended, it should be 11,000 instead of 12,000.
So, my one question on that is, we were told that that would be paid for by Houstonic Water. You could mandate it to be paid for by Houstonic Water.
That would be worked out through some legal action.
That's not what we were told at the time.
So Rebecca, last year you were approved for 11,000. You requested 21 this year. And I pulled that additional funding out for the water testing for that reason, that I think and hope that we're heading in a direction requiring the water company to fund that expense. So is 12,000
For contracted services,
sufficient?
12,000 would be sufficient.
Okay, water testing aside, just
Water.
all of your regular contracted services.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was. So the only piece that I intended to pull out was the water testing portion of it. Not eliminate all of your contracted services.
Right, and if you'll allow it, I know that 2, maybe 3 of the Board of Health members are here to add supplemental information to those 2 lines. I don't know if you want to do that now or at the end, but.
If they can do it briefly now, or they're gonna have to discuss it again when we go through every line and make our final decision, but they can do it now.
I'm sorry, could you clarify why the new legal number is not in the town manager recommended?
Sure, right now, I feel like we can handle whatever action the Board of Health may take in our current legal budget. And this figure represents more than half of what the entire town uses, so I didn't think it was a figure that I felt comfortable supporting.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna ask where this number came, the 50,000.
And we were discussing, what action we might take. That was the number that was estimated for what it might cost to pursue it.
I think I would suggest instead, if we wanted to consider increasing the legal budget, that we look at increasing our legal budget and to provide those services to the Board of Health through that.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of it being a clean process.
And this question did come up, and maybe it's worth clarifying here that the Board of Health isn't interested in contracting its own lawyer. We would obviously be using our town council, just whatever expenses are incurred, we pay through our budget.
So if you want to have a couple people speak briefly.
Virtual.
Who am I looking for? Ruby's
Jeffrey Chang and Michael Lanu.
They're
Hello?
both unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Ruby Chang, Board of Health. As long as I've been on the Board of Health, I think this is the first time we've requested legal support. As you all know, if we were to issue orders, the back and forth can carry on for several months. If we can have the money necessary to do regular water testing, independent of Housatonic Water Works, we would be able to get answers for our citizens a lot sooner than if we go through cease and desist orders and back and forth and the lawyers talking among themselves. And before we know it, it's summer and it's fall. And we have another season of people using water that they have no idea if it's safe to drink or not. So this is really crucial to public health, and the Board of Health have been limited in our ability because we don't have the funding. So this is our opportunity to request the whole town of Great Barrington to understand the expediency that is necessary for us to do our work.
You're Ruby Michael?
Hello all, sorry, I've got my son. If you hear some strange sounds, it's just him. First thing I'd like to say is regarding the legal budget, Mark, I think we kind of came to putting some number in there as a way of just kind of so we could have a conversation. And if I'm totally on board with you, if you say that any legal costs that we may incur, should we take legal action? If that's covered in the town budget, I'm fine with not having that in our health department budget. As for the water testing, I think that's still an ongoing conversation. There's many moving parts to that, and it's not clear on our board exactly which direction we're going to go. But it's something we are looking at. But we wanted to have some money put in there in case that's a route that we could go. Rather than another route. So I think I asked Rebecca, we all asked Rebecca to put that in there as a way of responding to our own Board of Health and deliberations.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep, thank you, Steve.
So, any questions of Rebecca?
So the water testing, is that the contracted services? That's kind of a reference.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a number you pulled out. So I'm just wondering, where does that lead us? So let's say we test 5 houses and then there's, 800 other people that want theirs. And then, half of them find out, yes, there is something wrong, but we're not sure and it's murky. And then the others are waiting. And I just feel like we're kind of we could be going down this rabbit hole. Not that I don't agree that it should be done, but I'm just wondering where's the end game? Where do we see this ending up? And do we feel like once we start the process, are we going to be ending someplace we're worried about reaching?
Yeah, I mean, my professional opinion is that the best way to go about this is to get, a private company to do this testing, someone that's well-versed in water companies who would know where and when to test and could do it in the most professional way, as opposed to just randomly choosing 5 homes, 5 places along, the lines to get, random results. So and as to your question as to where it leads us, I think it would just give us more information, more broader information than maybe what we're getting from DEP, but our hope is to collaborate with DEP to see if, they would uphold any testing results that were different from what they've collected.
So that brings me to the next question of, what if we don't do it the way that they, would want it to be, and they say, well, this doesn't, take into account blah, blah, blah. So I would want to make sure we're in hand with what they expect.
Yeah.
And then if we have Housatonic Waterworks coming in with their own testing saying no, so then we have 3 different. So I just feel like I'd like a bigger picture and a better idea of where this is headed, and make sure that we've actually talked to the DEP and that they're in line with what we're trying to do.
I totally agree. I think there's a lot to still be worked out with this hypothetical potential claims.
Can I ask you a question? So what is being done in terms of independent testing today? Is there-
Right now,
yeah.
just DEP.
DEP is the ones that do it,
Testing,
and how often do they test?
I think they test for various things on a different schedule, like they might test for one contaminant once a month. They
Oh,
might
it's
test for
depending on what
another
it is, yeah,
contaminant
testing.
once a week.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thanks for that. Debt service, page 28. I got everyone in the room on that one.
Okay, so, if you refer to the debt schedule summary in tab 4, you will see what our current obligated debt payments are. That's where you see the 2,101,50 for the principal, long-term principal, and the interest payment is 1,041,984. What that one represents is the current debt service payment of 864,463, plus a projected $7 to $8 million bond issuance that we anticipate issuing in November. So that would be, the financial advisors are suggesting to use a 5% interest rate as an estimate. So that would be about 177,482 plus some rounding, and that's what makes up the 1,041,984. Short-term interest and pay downs, I left that at 210,000. We will have a projected $2 to $3 million band issuance at the end of June. That will be estimated between 3.75 and 5% interest rate. I know we're in some pretty rough times up and down, so, and there's a potential for pay down, so that's why we went with 209,974, rounding at $26, brought it basically back to the 210, ironically enough. Debt issuance costs. So there's the projected bond anticipation note in June that we anticipate around 16,500. The bond that we are anticipating in November of 7 to 8 million will mostly be covered by the premiums, but we did roll in about $8,000 for
Sorry, are you looking
dollars.
at something right now, or are you reading off the same?
I cannot, sorry, I'm not able to reconcile any of those numbers you are reading. I'm
Are
sorry.
you reading off a page in the binder, or?
No, I'm reading off my notes.
Okay.
Okay, that's why we cannot
Yeah, to
really,
just tell you what the,
it's very difficult to
anticipation
follow,
is.
frankly, what you are saying, if we don't
Okay.
see the numbers. So
Can we try it
Can we
again?
put it up on the screen there maybe, or, I don't know.
She's giving the background calculations.
Yeah.
No, I understand them, but I cannot follow it just listening to it. Can you?
Yeah, I hear you there. So wanted to go through it. I think we're gonna ask you for some follow-up information on
Yeah.
the schedule format. So, but why don't we let you continue your remarks?
Okay, so then the last piece was just the debt issuance costs and the $7 to $8 million bond that we're anticipating borrowing for. We're estimating about $8,450 for issuance costs because the premium costs in that bond will probably cover most of, if not all, of the debt issuance costs.
Questions?
So I'll let Melina stab at it, but I would ask you if you could prepare a schedule just highlighting, you know, the sources of the increased interest number. So basically, the bottom of the page would have the 1,041,000. And you would break that down between existing short-term debt that where the interest rate has gone up, and the projected higher interest rate on the bond offering that you're projecting for this
Okay,
year.
sure.
And just-
I basically, that's pretty much what I did do for my own personal.
Right, yes, yeah, so we're
I
just
just
asking.
followed,
your-
honestly, just
yeah.
followed exactly what I did last year.
Okay,
I
so.
apologize that I.
No, that's fine, that's fine. So just, if you could, try to make that, understandable to the broader audience, and that'll be helpful. There's obviously a huge number relative to our budget increase, so I think we need to look at it in a little more detail just to understand it, but there's no surprise to it.
Yeah, the majority of the increase is debt that's already incurred.
Right,
It's what's been approved at the town meeting.
It's already been borrowed in this past November.
but just big picture, we have existing short-term debt that's floating rate, and that's increased, right?
Yes.
So there's the floating rate increases and then the projected longer term fixed rate offering. Right, so just kind of breaking it down between those two.
So I guess I just want to, because I will, I think we all, when we saw this percentage increase and dollar sign increase in, the debt service, it's a huge portion of our budget increase and it's leading to a really high percentage increase. And I'm looking at the debt schedule on tab 4, and it looks like our bond in fiscal year 23, which was this in November, was much more than we've seen in previous years. And I just want to make sure I understand, this is what we approved in total capital expenditures and borrowing at last year's budget. So I do think, this is my concern that we just keep borrowing and we just keep, and I assume it has something to do with increased interest rate or not at all. It's all just the amount borrowed.
It's really based on the amount borrowed.
The amount borrowed. So, yeah, I just think we really have to look at our borrowing. I mean, this is.
Yeah, I totally.
In that spirit, if you could maybe, and highlighting, a part of the schedule would be, what would our increase in interest cost be if interest rates were the same as they were last year at this time? Roughly.
I
Yeah, so in other words,
saying that it's.
let me clarify, I'm saying a portion of our increased interest costs is because we borrowed more based upon what was approved last year. I think that's what Ann is saying. Another big chunk of our increased interest costs is because interest rates have gone up.
Right.
So if you could help us understand approximately.
Yeah,
that
not
difference.
hugely, actually. The coupon rate was about 3.978, I believe, and we estimated 5
Yeah, well, that's good.
in last year's budget. And we did estimate 11 million, which is what our borrowing was 11
Yeah.
million.
But that increase is broken down between the things that we all control. How much we approve for borrowings versus what is not under our control, which is the interest rate increases. So.
It's not just so you know, it's not just directly the authorizations you approved this year, it's all prior
Right, no,
authorizations.
I hear it,
They're
so
all
I'm
issue bonds.
really oversimplifying what is very complex, and
Yeah.
I've seen the schedules and all the individual line items, so maybe I'm asking an impossible simplification, but it would be helpful to understand that a bit more.
So, one of the things I think people, at least at home and in the audience, have to remember, we approved something 3 years ago at a town meeting, doesn't mean we're borrowing it the next year. It might be 3 years later when we do the project that the borrowing happens. And so the more projects we do at once, the more we're gonna borrow. It's funny that way, they wanna pay back. So last year was 11 million, but the year before was a large amount, the year before that was a large amount. And we're doing those projects now, and then we start paying it back.
Yeah, so part of the problem maybe was because Joe's department was so good at actually getting the stuff done and using the money.
Yes.
But is that correct?
Yes.
You're not wrong. I mean, he did, I think, $8 million. worth
Right, no,
of
so it's good, but
Last year, it's a good thing.
but it shows up in this number.
Yeah.
Although,
Sorry,
I'm sorry, Renee, go ahead.
I mean, I totally agree with what Phil said. I mean, for me, it's important to understand the impact of the, increase of borrowing and the impact of the interest rate increase as well. But also, I would like to get a really more detailed information than what is available in the schedule. And I'm sure you have it, I don't want to bother you too much with that, but I really would like to see the interest rates for each of that issue. And I mean, I can
For
only.
each of these issues?
Yeah, what you have here, what you have, you listed here, basically, three components of borrowing, right? One for general fund, one for community preservation, right? One for wastewater, but I don't really see I don't see at what rates we are.
Well, they're different rates because that's.
I understand that they are
combination.
different rates.
If you go to the tab 4, you'll see the debt schedule is in there.
Where is the schedule?
And the summary on the front page, it does not have interest rates on all of
But
these.
I don't see that here.
Boxes.
Oh,
Next page.
yeah, but that just gives me the amount of interest. It doesn't tell me, I'm just looking for the interest rate. I'm just trying to understand.
So I just want to make sure I get all this information correct.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is what is really the debt that we have in our books. I want to understand, the tenor of the debt. I want to understand the interest rates on that debt.
So do you want to see the debt service schedules so that you can see the lifetime payments of the loans?
I
Is that what you're looking
I don't
for?
necessarily need to see all what I'm asking for is a maturity and the interest. What is the coupon on those bonds? That's all, whether it's fixed or
It is a
floating.
little complicated because when you're bonding, there's, some things have 5-year maturities, some have 10, some have 15, some have 20. So in one borrowing, you may have, 30 projects. And
So
some
what you
are-
are saying, you are really saying your borrowing is on a project basis?
Yes.
So you have all these have
So I have
individual notes
separate-
behind them?
Yes, I have
Oh.
separate debt schedules for
Okay,
every single
okay.
piece of every single
Okay.
borrowing. That's why I.
Okay, so I totally understand. Okay, I didn't realize that. So,
What I would say is
Yeah.
I pestered your predecessor a couple of years ago with very similar questions. And it turns out that the financial advisor really has those sort of
They should
master
have it, yeah.
schedules
yeah,
with all the gory detail that I believe Melanie is asking for.
they must have it. I mean, that's
Oh,
really,
absolutely.
yeah. They
But
must
with
have it.
every bond, it's probably somewhere between 25, 40 pages, depending on how many projects there are.
But
One schedule for each.
they aggregated all those little all the little bondlets, or I'll make up a word, and basically aggregated them to the one with a weighted average maturity and a weighted average interest rate.
Mhm.
And that was very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really concerned about the amount of leverage, to be perfectly
I
honest.
understand.
Yeah, so, and maybe it's just how it has to be, but I don't really know, because I cannot really tell from the information here. So, but maybe we can work together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
would
just
be
like,
great.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, yeah.
It definitely exists. It's just. a little bit-
Yeah, right, they
Yeah,
make
it's
for
just
living, so-
condensing
they
it to
must
a
have it,
version
yeah.
that will be
Yeah.
helpful to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I just want to clarify. I went back and I looked at the warrants for the last 5 years in terms of capital borrowing. And I do think last year we approved a lot more than we have in prior years. So I guess I just don't want us to think that it's all just a piling up of previously approved borrowing. It's actually, we did have a pretty high borrowing
last year.
amount last year.
Right.
And
Sure.
I guess I'll just throw this out. We're looking at an even larger one next year, and I just want us to, I just worry
No,
Because
and
it's
maybe
such a
right,
huge
but-
percentage of our increase in our budget.
No, and I get that. What a little surprises me, and you're much better in finance than I, you borrow, you gotta pay it back. So when we had this large amount last year, we knew we would have to pay
I
it
know,
back.
I agree, I know, I guess I'll say maybe we were complacent after about 3 years of reduced borrowing. We had small percentage increases in this line. I also think in the year prior, in 2020, we borrowed at a pretty high rate. But I think we were able to renegotiate some loans and some debt, and so we kept that at bay, and I think here we are seeing the consequences. And I find myself thinking, you know, we've got some significant borrowing coming up, and how are we going to manage that?
And then the flip side of that, which far be it for me to try to figure out, is the less we do, the farther behind we fall.
I
In
know,
both infrastructure,
I know.
roads, bridges, and so we do have to balance that. And I think we're paying now for the fact that we did fall behind. Yeah, I don't have an answer.
I don't either. I
Yeah.
just think it's so hard to look at this year's or the coming fiscal year 25 budget and know that there's about 1 million, almost 1 million in increases that we have we can't we can't do anything. And then we have our operating budget that we're always in this position of sort of like, oh, maybe we can take 5,000 out of here and 2,000 out of here, but we've got these massive budget amounts here.
No, you're right.
And we've got a high tax rate, so we are in a
We sure
tough
do.
situation.
Well, we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
so next week.
Right.
Our last comment is that from my prior experiences, our budget process does not include the huge undertaking of saying, well, if we approve this debt amount, how it's gonna work its way through our budgets in the next 5 or 10 years. Because there are a lot of unknowns. Like you said, we don't know exactly what how the maturities will break out between all the equipment items and when they're actually borrowed as opposed to approved and unborrowed. So there's a wide array of variables there. But because we don't do that, then I think we kind of set ourselves up a bit where we have a bit of a surprise. So
I just want to point out that
And that's not
really
directed
the
to you.
only
Yeah.
increases that we're talking about on top of what we are already obligated to pay is debt, the long-term interest of about 178,000 and a ban short-term interest pay down, which is not really an increase because it's exactly the same as last year, and $5,000 for debt issuance costs. So the real increase that is not incurred yet.
Yeah.
Is really kind of in that ballpark of 200,000 or so. It's the big jump is, as I said, on tab 4, what we're already incurred. We borrowed in November, so we had an interest only payment last year. This year we'll have 2 interests and a principal payment. Because we borrowed
I'm
mid-year.
sorry, when I said that part of that is because Joe's team did a very good job of actually doing the work, which allowed us to then borrow. Is that actually sort of correct?
Yes.
It is sort of correct.
Okay.
We don't actually borrow the full amount long-term until the project is completed.
Yeah.
So equipment and trucks are more quickly ordered, but a bridge, we don't borrow the long-term note until it's done. And the quicker we get projects through a short-term phase and can issue a long-term bond, the quicker you see that on the debt
Right,
service.
okay, all right, because that's part of it, yeah. I'm actually complimenting you.
No, I mean, I don't want it to sound like this is we approved this.
So I just wanted to point out that really all that you would be approving that's not already obligated is about 200,000 or so for
Okay,
upcoming bonds and liens.
well, if you're completely confused by what we've asked, then please reach out to me tomorrow, whenever you do it,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about it.
Mhm.
Page 29, retirement.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so the retirement contribution, that's an exact number that we got from Berkshire County Retirement, and they calculate that based on number of retirees in the system. And then Medicare is what it is. There's no, I took this year's gross wages, multiplied it by the 3% that everybody should be getting, and that's where I arrived at that number.
Questions, comments?
I'll comment that this relatively modest increase in our retirement contribution is a good thing, and it's very much consistent with some conversations I had with, I'm sorry, it was, Sheila, exactly, in previous years, so it's actually a good thing. We're close to being fully funded on our pension obligation.
Thank you. And last for the evening, page 30, insurance.
You bundled
Yes.
all the exciting stuff together.
Yes.
So for the health insurance, there was a 7% increase for fiscal year 25. And I think, I mean, that's reflected in that number, and I stayed level funded even with the 7% increase. And life insurance had no increase. And let's see, I'm just trying to look at the other lines. Not all of these lines are mine, so I'm just trying to kind of speak on the ones that are mine. Actually, I think those are the only, the health and life is the only line on that's mine.
Yeah, the others are covered by my office, and nothing too significant in the way of increases, but these are based on estimates from our insurance companies.
Questions, comments?
The health and life, as in prior years, that includes the health for active employees as well as the health insurance for the retired employees. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Steve, I know we're getting to the end of our list of topics. Are we gonna talk about free cash at one of these meetings? Remember, this is always something we leave to the last minute. And then when
We will. That usually comes to the last meeting.
Okay.
Maybe because you bring it up then. Yes, we can talk about free cash.
Yeah, I just think,
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I know there's some information in the booklet, but I'd love to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, citizen speak. Michelle, come right up.
Michelle Rivera, 70 Division Street. As a taxpayer whose tax bill has gone up several $100s, I've just paid it. I'm really watching these meetings closely, as well as being a former finance committee member. There was conversation regarding new positions and kind of like, well, this salary sounds good. And this was one of my frustrations when I was on the finance committee. It's like, where are you getting this number? Now we have an HR person, we should be able to have a salary administration plan where when we're hiring a new position, research is done. It's validated that the research is done, and this is what we came up with a respectable salary for a position. I get really frustrated when I hear we need this position, this is what we want to pay it, but there's no paperwork to support it, and I'm going to be asking for that. Again, now that we have an HR person, and I was a former HR professional, part of your training is salary administration and going out and researching.
We did do some research last year. We didn't pull that number out of thin air.
Okay, then I'd like to see the
But we
research.
did add, like I
Yeah.
said, $5,000.
Okay, so, that also being said, when we're looking at comparable communities, I would assume the communities in this area, as far as salaries go, not, in New York City or Boston or whatever. My other comment has to do with, I was really pleased that Mr. Orenstein made a statement at the beginning of the meeting because it was on my radar of possible conflicts. And I think anybody who's sitting on a board should really be aware of that. And I really appreciate his statement. It alleviated a lot of stress for me because I've been watching meetings and it was on my radar that there could be a conflict. So you headed off any problem just
Well,
by
it's on my
that.
radar too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
James.
Good evening, board. This is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road, and Michelle took my thunder because I was going to pretty much mimic what she said, and I'm just happy that everyone at the meeting is realizing that the taxes are just out of control already, and they're just going to get worse. And like everyone says, we know it, but we don't know what to do. So I appreciate all the hard work that everybody's doing. Thank you very much.
Okay. And seeing no one else, by unanimous consent, we are adjourned.